The night air was cool, and the sky was black, filled with twinkling stars millions of miles away. The fire pit was roaring, and the booze was flowing. It was our last backyard party of the year, and the 8 of us were having one last cookout before winter took over. Light jazz played in the background, and we were all sipping our favorite beverage. Ed was grilling the steaks and veggies while Martha was preparing the rest of the spread in the kitchen. Caroline and Frank were cuddled under a blanket on a lounger, whispering. She was giggling, so there was no telling what was happening under the blanket. Me, Heath, I lay casually, watching Sue and Dan slowly swaying to the tune. Sue had her hands behind Dan's head, running her fingers through his hair. Dan's hands slowly moved down Sue's back, cupping her bottom cheeks and squeezing them as they humped on each other. Their eyes were locked in a loving gaze. They looked like a couple in love. They were in their own little world, and I am sure in their own minds, they were the only 2 people here. It was a beautiful sight, but there was one little problem. They were not a couple in real life. No, Sue is my wife, at least she still is, and Dan is Donna's husband. Donna was lying on a lounger to my right, passed out. She doesn't handle alcohol well and has already gone over her limit. So, Donna had no idea what was going on and may not have cared. Even if she was awake, on the other hand, I was not happy with what I was seeing. It instantly raised questions in my mind. Their closeness and how they looked at each other made me suspect this was not the first time they had shared such an intimate moment. Sure, they had danced together many times over the 6 years we had all been friends. And there had been touching and a few kisses, but this was far different than just a casual dance and a little flirting. This was more of a full-on seduction. But the real question was, who was seducing whom, or was it mutual? To me, the husband, this looked like it was the continuation of an earlier encounter and possibly one of many interludes between them. I considered how to bring them back to reality and decided on a crazy idea. I slipped off my lounger and moved on to the lounger with Donna. She stirred. I leaned over and whispered, I hoped that would wake her up. Open your eyes and see what I have been watching. Don't move or say anything. Just look at them. Donna's eyes fluttered and opened. They looked glazed as she tried to understand what I had told her. Her eyes began to clear, and she looked up at me with confusion written on her face. She opened her mouth to speak, but I put my finger over her lips, shook my head, and looked toward Sue and Dan. I saw a change in Donna's eyes. She quickly sobered up as anger surfaced. Donna started to move. I gripped her arm and whispered, No, Donna, don't do anything. We need to see what happens and how this plays out. Donna looked at me like I was crazy. Tears formed in her eyes. I whispered, I don't know what is happening, but we will know soon and end this tonight. I held her, and she sighed, Okay, Heath. We lay back and watched our spouses as they continued their seductive dance. Looking to see if anyone noticed them, they slowly moved across the pool deck to a darker area. I took out my phone and took a few pictures, then as they moved into the shadows, I started a video following them. The phone lens made the darkness seem lighter, so I could see when they began to kiss and feel each other more intimately. These were not friendly kisses or acts. They were acts of lovers. Donna watched, and as she saw them kiss, she turned to me, whispering, That was a capital idea, and it would serve the cheaters right, really? I asked quietly. I was semi-hard. I admit that watching my wife being handled by another man was a little bit exciting but also very upsetting at the same time, especially when the man had been my best friend for over 20 years. Donna, are you serious? I whispered. Donna was fully awake and clear-eyed. I have suspected Dan has been fucking someone for a while now. I just had no idea who the woman was. Now I guess I know. That statement sent a bolt of anger through me. Was it true? I had not seen any signs or was too blind to see them. I swallowed hard and looked at Donna. Do you think Dan and Sue have been fucking? Well, Heath, look at them. They're all over each other. Haven't you seen them flirting whenever we are together? They went missing last week at your house while we played cards. What was that all about? Sue told me she went to show Dan the work we were doing downstairs in the new family room, I said. How do I miss these things? I asked in desperation. You love her and would never think she could cheat on you. The same way I feel about Dan. Jesus, Dan is your best friend. Who does that to his best friend? Donna asked with ire in her voice. Did you say anything to Dan? I asked. Hell no, he's rich. He is an excellent dad to Ellie, and I love him. As long as he doesn't leave me and treats me with respect, which he is not doing now, I will tolerate his around. Later tonight, things will change, as I am sure they will with Sue. But for now, let's have fun at their expense. What is good for them is good for us. Okay, let's do it. Dinner will be ready soon. Let's go fuck and come back a little late. Let them wonder about where we have been. I said, leaning down and kissing her softly. Donna rolled away from me, stood, and held out her hand. I was up in a flash, taking her hand and following her lead. We made our way past Ed and Martha, who were talking as they worked on the food. They paid us no mind, so we slipped into the house, upstairs to a guest bedroom. The door closed, and the lock set. Donna sucked air in and hissed. She looked me in the eyes. Heath, no one has ever played back there. Never, not even touching you there? I asked. No, never. That is nasty, but I might try it. Are you ready for the best of your life? I teased. I moved over to the bathroom door, closed it, and pressed Donna against the robe hanging there. We were making a lot of noise, banging against the door. I was getting tired, so I spun around and moved to bed. We should have done this before. Donna looked up at me, locking her eyes on mine. Donna's scream was shrill, so everyone had to hear it. I want to worship it more when we can take a while and not just have a quickie. We will do this again regardless of what happens tonight. We owe it to each other, and those two cheaters can't say a fucking word. We have to go. If they don't know where we are, they will look for us, I said. We dressed and walked down the steps, through the kitchen, and out on the pool deck. As we walked out the sliding glass door, Donna smiled and asked, is there a big steak ready for me and Heath? We are both starving now. Everyone stopped eating and looked up at us. Dan and Sue were sitting close together, as I expected. When we came outside, they looked shocked, as did Martha and Ed. But Frank kept eating. Caroline smiled, saying, we wondered where you had gone. The others all looked at Caroline and then at us. Sue looked at Dan, then back at me, and asked, where were you? What have you two been doing? Donna piped up. I had something I needed Heath to help me with inside. He did an excellent job. I am very satisfied with his effort. Donna smiled, walked to the food warmer, and got 2 big ribeye steaks and corn. I smiled and sat down at the open side of the picnic table. Donna came over and handed me a plate. Here you go, darling. You need to keep up your strength. She teased, rubbing the back of my neck with a little giggle. Boy, Donna was really laying it on them. Sue looked at me with concern on her face. She wondered where we had been and hoped I would say something, but I said nothing. Then she leaned over and whispered, what were you helping Donna with? I looked at Sue, letting my mouth turn into a sly smile, but said nothing. I paid no attention to her or Dan either. That indeed made them uneasy. I began to eat. Whatever conversation the group was having when we came out had ended right then. Strange looks were all around, but Donna and I were smiling and happy. So, I added a little something and asked, so what did we miss while we were inside? No one said anything. Once again, I dug in a little more. Before we went inside, I saw you two fooling around under the blanket, you naughty kids, I teased, pointing at Frank and Caroline between bites. Suddenly, they looked sheepish and a little embarrassed. No problem, Caroline, I am sure it felt good, and your scent. Oh my! I said as I ran my middle finger under my nose and smiled. Their faces blushed, and Caroline whispered something to Frank. I couldn't hear her, but she looked at me and smiled. Donna elbowed me. "Stop being so mean, Heath." The 6 of them were taken by my boldness. I was not generally like this. I am the quiet one that lets everyone else get in their jabs, with me being the butt of the jokes many times. Maybe that is why Dan and Sue thought what they were doing was okay. Well, they were about to learn differently. Donna leaned into me and swatted my shoulder. It was all in fun, or supposed to seem like that. But we knew that Sue and Dan were on edge. I decided to be a little more direct. "So, Dan, I was watching you two dancing and mentioned it to Donna. We are both concerned because you looked glued at your hips like Sue and I when we danced together. You looked like lovers. Is there anything to that?" I wondered because I was talking to Donna after I woke her up. "You two slipped off into the shadows like you wanted some private time. What was that all about?" My tone was very firm, not like I usually would be. Now that I had smacked them with the direct question, how would they react? Donna and I stared at them, not taking our eyes off our partners. And suddenly, they put down their forks and looked at each other with questioning eyes. The looks on their faces changed from questioning to concern, with a bit of fear mixed in. Simultaneously, they looked at us and swallowed hard. They were trying to fashion an answer, but before either of them could speak, I added something more. "As you two danced over to the dark side of the yard, I took a few pictures. Maybe I should send the pics to the group, and you guys can tell Donna and me what you think." I played with my phone for a second, then looked at the two of them. Their faces were covered with fear. I hit send, and the pictures and video went to the partiers. Suddenly, all their phones buzzed and chimed. I sat back and whispered to Donna, "They're caught." Donna gripped my thigh, squeezing it. When Sue opened her phone, my text opened, and she saw my message. My text, "Caught you." And the video played, showing Dan kissing her. At about the exact moment, Dan opened my text, "You were my best friend, no more. You are nothing to me, and probably Donna as well." The look on their faces was, well, a MasterCard moment of the greatest magnitude. Oh God! What have I done? Heath saw Dan and me dancing, grinding like we were lovers. I was caught up in the moment, so between being tipsy and horny, Dan had me going. And Donna, my good friend, and I had been with her husband. Do they know what else has happened? I hope not. Today, we were all having a good time. Swimming earlier, sunbathing, and drinking. I had too many tequila shots. When Dan started flirting with me, putting on the press as he had recently done. He has been after me a lot lately, getting me twice before today. I can't resist him when he does this, and he usually breaks me down and gets me. I don't know why this started suddenly, but something about him gets to me. It had never been like this until about a month ago. Nothing had ever happened before except that we had kissed as we all had occasionally. We also had been a little handsy with each other. One day, a month ago, that all changed. Dan called me at work to go for coffee, and like an idiot, I agreed. He picked me up at lunch and drove us to a Starbucks on the other side of town near the college so no one we knew could see us. We had coffee, and we split a sweet pastry. Then Dan started to work on me. He held my hand. He told me, "Wow," I was shocked. What an admission. I had a hard time sitting still. I was perplexed, shocked even more. I pulled my hand away and sat back, moving my chair away so his leg no longer touched me. I pulled out my cell phone and ordered an Uber. Dan sat looking at me, waiting for my response. I said nothing and just looked at him. I started to fidget. Finally, 5 minutes passed, and I stood. "Thank you for the coffee in your offer, but I must leave now." I turned and walked out to the waiting Uber, not looking back. On the ride back to work, I received a text from Dan. I waited to read it till I was in my office. Dan's text, "I am sorry I shocked you, but your leaving does not change how I feel." I was shocked at Dan's boldness. He was my husband's best friend. I didn't want to cheat on Heath and create a problem between them or Donna, his wife, and me. All his flirting had some effect on me. And it happened every time we were together. I thought of my response and wrote, my text, Dan, you are bold. I like that. I am not sure this idea is good, but it interests me. I will have to think about it. Don't stop trying. You might get lucky. I sent it and instantly thought what a foolish thing to do. I was leading Dan on. I didn't want him to stop. The flirting was fun, and I could stop any time I wanted, couldn't I? I looked up at Heath and smiled. He liked it. I was eating and looking at Dan and Sue. How long had they been? How many times? Has it been going on for a long time or just recently? Donna was right. Sue and Dan had vanished last week and were gone for a long time. We didn't miss them as we played cards. Sue did seem happy when they returned upstairs, but we thought nothing of it. Later, I saw them in the sunroom, sitting close together, whispering. They both smiled when they saw me, and I thought that was a little strange. I thought about what Donna had said about me, never thinking that Sue could cheat on me, and indeed not with my best friend. I guess it's the old line, keep your friends close but your enemies closer, was true. In a quick moment, Dan had gone from my best friend to my enemy. I hated that. Things started to click in my head. I thought back a few weeks when Sue had come home and attacked me. That was not like her. I knew someone had turned her on before she got home. But I had no idea who. Now I know it was Dan. I may have to thank him for that night. It was incredible. Donna leaned over and whispered, Heath, do you want some dessert? Her voice was a little too loud, and everyone looked at me, waiting for my answer. What did you have in mind? I asked. With a smirk, I looked across at Sue and Dan. They both had concerned looks on their faces. They stared at us, looking at Donna, then at me. The anticipation was thick in the air. Donna leaned over and whispered, I am just stirring the pot to see their reaction. We were giving them what they had given us, and everyone watched as this little charade unfolded. It was fun, but the more I played the game, the more upset I got, thinking that my best friend did not have quite the same view of what they had done as Donna. I was not sure what I thought and what I would do about it. I leaned over and whispered to Donna. Are you ready? I am putting this mess on the table, and we are stopping things right this minute. Donna giving me the okay. Donna took a stack of plates to the kitchen and returned with a bottle of Jack Daniels and 2 glasses. I poured each one of us a glass and drank mine down. I filled the glass again and looked at Sue and Dan. The table talk had stopped, and there was complete silence. What was next? Around the table, I could see shock. Everyone, including me, was a little surprised at me. For the first time, I showed a side of me none of them had ever seen. Angry Heath. Sue was stunned, unable to utter a word. Her mouth was agape, but nothing was coming out. My eyes were locked on Sue, and my anger grew by the second. My blood pressure rose, and my pulse increased as my heart pounded. My mouth became dry like it was full of cotton. I gulped Jack Daniels and calmly looked at Sue. She was in full panic mode now, not knowing what to do or say. No excuses. No explanation. Sue had cheated on me. Tears suddenly began to roll down her cheeks. Dan leaned toward Sue, and Donna barked, Don't you touch or speak to her. Everyone moved a little at Donna's outburst. And Dan looked shocked. I am not sure she had ever spoken to Dan that way before. I continued to stare Sue down, not breaking eye contact. She could not look me in the eye and dropped her head into her hands, sobbing. I sat silently as she slowly self-destructed before all of our eyes. I looked at Dan, who looked distraught and reacted to Donna and me. He knew they had made a grave error and were about to pay for it. Then, the peanut gallery piped in. Ed stood up and looked down on the guilty couple. We are all best friends, and this shit does not happen in groups like ours. You have just fucked up our happy family. We will never be able to have these parties. Go to dinner, or do anything together again, well, that lit the fire. Frank and Caroline entered the fray, verbally barging Sue and Dan. Then Ed and Martha attacked again. It was something to see, so Donna and I just sat back and let them all go after the cheaters, giving them a significant tongue lashing about her cheating. Either way, I enjoyed both very much. As painful as this was, and not knowing the future outcome and the impact on my marriage, the confrontation was exhilarating for the moment. Watching Dan and Sue squirm under verbal onslaught was almost worth my pain. I was experiencing this betrayal with all my good friends, and they were helping Donna and me punish the cheaters. That part was fun, but that was rapidly ending. It was Donna's turn. She looked across at Sue and attacked Sue. I thought you were a respectable woman and my friend. You have the best man at this table, but he does not seem enough for you. Tears welled up and rolled down Donna's cheeks. I looked at Sue. She was in shock and was shrinking away, looking for a way to hide as she was verbally attacked. The pain on her face was palpable, but she could do nothing. She knew she was wrong and had hurt everyone there, not just Donna and me, but all our friends, too. Dan was sitting there, trapped in his place. There was no place to hide. He knew this was all his fault. His relentless flirting and pursuit of Sue had led to this moment. I could see the concern edging toward fear on his face. Dan knew his head was on the chopping block next, and he was unsure what would happen between him, Donna, and the rest of us. He was the best I have had in many years. So, Sue, why would you ever want Dan? I know what I have with Dan. I bought and paid for him, and I love him. He satisfies me and is a good dad to Ellie. Then you come along and fuck that all up. Were you trying to take him away from me? Why? Tell me that why. I gripped Donna's arm, squeezed it, and whispered, "Take it easy, Donna. You'll have a stroke or nervous breakdown." Donna took a breath and looked at me. Then at Dan. She stared at him, then started. Sue would never have come after you. I have seen you flirt with her for months, and last week, maybe even before then, you finally broke her down. Please don't deny it, Jesus. Donna went full-on ballistic on both of them. I was shocked and glad she had spilled it all out. I honestly could not have captured my thoughts any better. Suddenly, Sue screamed, "Oh God, Dan, what have we done? Our life is over." And bolted across the pool deck, running into the house. I quickly followed her, and as I reached the kitchen, I heard the front door slam, and Sue was gone. I stood on the front steps and looked up the street as Sue went out of sight. We live a block up the street, so I was sure she was running home, seeking refuge from the verbal attack and devastating embarrassment of what she had done to me and Donna, and not knowing what I was going to do. I stood there thinking. I had just ended the brief affair my wife was engaged in. Now what?